stand in front of Pillar 18 at Göbekli Tepe. 11 tons of limestone carved as a single piece from bedrock, shaped into a T that towers 5.5 meters above you. Run your hand across its surface, polished smooth, no visible chisel marks. Precision that matches modern CNC grinding standards. The official story says hunter-gatherers made this with copper chisels and stone hammers around 9,600 BCE, 6,000 years before Stonehenge, before anyone had pottery or metal tools or written language. But here is the problem. The surface finish requires abrasive grinding techniques that leave no trace on surrounding stone. And if we are wrong about how this was made, we are not just questioning one pillar, we are questioning whether hunter-gatherers were actually hunter-gatherers and what that means for everything we think happened next in human history. The circular structure surrounding you stretches 12 meters across. 20 pillars form the ring, each one carved from bedrock 100 meters uphill. Each one transported here without wheels or draft animals or any technology we can identify. Discovered in 1994, less than 5% of the site has been excavated. Ground-penetrating radar shows at least 20 more structures buried below, possibly older, possibly larger. The official timeline places this construction at the end of the Ice Age, built by mobile groups who hunted gazelles and gathered wild grains. No permanent settlements, no agriculture, no organizational hierarchy. Yet the logistics modeling is clear. Moving these pillars required at least 200 workers coordinating for months, fed by food surpluses that should not exist for another 1,000 years. Effect precedes cause. The timeline creaks under the weight of its own contradictions. Look closer at the carvings. Scorpions, foxes, snakes, wild boars, rendered in raised relief with detail that captures muscle structure and movement. The carving techniques show percussion impact followed by systematic abrasion. Tool marks should be everywhere. Limestone is soft enough that stone hammers leave obvious pitting. Copper chisels, if they existed this early, create parallel grooves and edge burrs, but the surface is clean. Smooth transitions between carved and uncarved stone. No stuttering where the tool slipped. No overstrikes where force misjudged depth. Modern stonemasons using steel tools leave more evidence than this. The Copper Age does not officially begin until 5000 BCE, 4,000 years after Gobekli Tepe. Someone carved these animals with tools that are not supposed to exist, using techniques that leave no signature. And then there is the geometry. Circular layouts achieved without visible planning marks, no trial circles scratched into stone, no correction marks where measurements went wrong. Just perfection emerging from bedrock on the first attempt. The scale does not make sense. Each pillar weighs between 10 and 16 tons. The quarry site sits 100 meters uphill. One unfinished pillar remains attached to bedrock, 7 meters long and 50 tons, abandoned during carving. They stopped and walked away. No explanation why. Transporting 16 tons downhill without wheels means dragging. Plant fiber ropes tested under load break at 2 tons. Even if 200 workers pulled together, force distribution across that many people creates coordination problems that pre-modern societies solved with written instructions and hierarchical management, neither of which existed in 9600 BCE. The pressure calculation is worse. 16 tons distributed across a pillar base creates 12 tons per square meter of soil contact. Compacted earth without prepared roads fails at 4 tons per square meter. The pillars should have sunk into the ground during transport, but they did not. No sled marks, no ramp remnants, no evidence of the infrastructure this movement requires. Just the pillars, standing in perfect circles, as if physics negotiated. The quarry tells a different story than the enclosures. That 50-ton unfinished pillar shows the carving sequence clearly. Percussion trenches define the outline. Workers removed the surrounding bedrock systematically, and they undercut the base to separate the pillar from its matrix. The work is methodical, controlled, clearly planned. But here is what engineering teams found when they modeled the extraction. Removing 50 tons of bedrock around a pillar generates thousands of tons of debris. No debris field exists near the quarry. The stone fragments had to go somewhere. Either they buried them, which would have required more labor than the carving itself, or they used them elsewhere, which implies permanent settlement and construction projects we have not found. The unfinished pillar's surface shows no weathering beyond what the other pillars display. That means all the pillars, finished and unfinished, experience similar environmental exposure. If the finished pillars stood exposed for 1600 years before burial, the unfinished one did too. But if they stopped carving suddenly, why does the abandoned pillar show the same erosion as completed work that was transported and erected elsewhere? The timing does not close. Watch how they placed the pillars. Each one sits in a mortise socket carved into bedrock. The socket depth is precisely calculated, deep enough for stability, shallow enough that the pillar's center of gravity remains above ground level. The tolerance is 2 mm. Modern concrete forms achieve 5 mm tolerance. These are better. Tipping a 16-ton pillar upright without cranes requires either a ramp system that distributes force gradually or a lever system that multiplies human effort. Ramps leave compacted approach paths and debris from construction. Levers require fulcrum points carved into bedrock and hardwood beams that resist compression. We find neither. The circular geometry is measured, not improvised. Laser scans reveal that pillar spacing follows mathematical ratios. Positions correlate with angles divisible by specific degrees. The surveying instruments needed to achieve this accuracy include sighting tools, measuring cords, and reference markers. No such tools appear in the archaeological record until Bronze Age Egypt, 3,000 years later. Yet the circles are perfect. No corrections, no failed attempts buried beneath successful ones. Just immediate mastery of geometry that appears without precedent. 35 kilometers northeast, another site, Karahan Tepe. Same T-shaped pillars, same bedrock carving, same mortise joints with 2 mm tolerance, same circular layouts, same abandonment and burial around 8000 BCE. The construction signature is identical, not similar, identical, like the same team moved from site to site or the same technical manual was being followed. Navali Quarry, 60 kilometers north, shows the same pattern. 20 structures across a 200-kilometer radius, all built within a 500-year window, all displaying techniques that supposedly do not exist yet. The cultural diffusion model says techniques spread slowly through contact, trade, and migration. But these sites show no contact, no shared pottery styles because pottery does not exist yet, no trade goods because long-distance trade networks are not established, no written records because writing will not be invented for another 6,000 years. Yet somehow, precision stone carving, mathematical surveying, and organizational logistics appear simultaneously across a region the size of Belgium, and then vanish. The next generation builds simpler structures with cruder techniques. Knowledge does not diffuse, it disappears. Enclosure D has a problem. The lowest pillars show heavy water, erosion, smooth channels carved by flowing water, undercutting at the base, surface pitting consistent with prolonged exposure to rain and runoff. The erosion patterns suggest centuries of weathering, but the site was deliberately buried around 8000 BCE. Fill layer analysis is conclusive. They backfilled the entire structure with limestone fragments and soil, sealing it completely. If construction began around 9600 BCE and burial occurred around 8000 BCE, that is 1600 years of exposure. But the erosion looks older, more consistent with 3000 years of exposure. Either the climate was dramatically wetter than climate models suggest, or the pillars stood exposed longer than the carbon dates indicate. And then there is the burial itself. Why bury it? The standard explanation is ritual closure, sacred site, retirement. But that does not explain the effort. Backfilling 12-meter structures requires moving thousands of tons of material uphill. It is harder than building them. You do not hide something unless it needs hiding. What changed in 8000 BCE that required erasing these monuments from view? Track the construction quality over time. Gobekli Tepe represents peak sophistication with massive pillars, complex carvings, and mathematical precision. The structures built afterward, like Çatalhöyük around 7500 BCE, use smaller stones, simpler layouts, and rougher finishes. By 6000 BCE, construction quality has degraded further. The technological progression runs backward. Standard archaeological models expect incremental improvement. Early attempts are crude, later attempts are refined. You see learning curves in pottery, in metallurgy, in writing systems. But here, mastery appears fully formed at the beginning, then degrades. No practice runs buried beneath Göbekli Tepe. No experimental structures showing technique development. Just sudden expertise, followed by loss. Later builders clearly did not understand how the early structures were made. At sites reusing Gobekli Tepe pillars, new walls butt crudely against old surfaces. The joints do not match. The newer work cannot achieve the older precision. It is like watching master craftsmanship forgotten within generations. Knowledge does not just diffuse slowly, it reverses. And there is no historical model for technological regression, this rapid outside of civilizational collapse. But what civilization collapsed before civilization supposedly began? The carbon dating creates its own problems. All the dates come from organic material in the fill layers, charcoal, bone fragments, plant matter mixed with soil. They are dating the burial, not the construction. The pillars themselves are limestone, which cannot be carbon dated. The carvings could be centuries or millennia older than the structures enclosing them. Some researchers propose the pillars were carved earlier, left exposed for unknown periods, and then incorporated into the circular enclosures later. That would explain the erosion mismatch. Pillars weathered longer than the official timeline allows. But it creates a worse problem. It means people carved 50-ton monoliths without plans to use them, left them standing in quarries and open fields for centuries, and then different groups found them and built temples around them. That implies even earlier sophisticated stoneworking cultures we have no record of. The astronomical alignments add another layer. Computer models show that specific pillar orientations match sunrise positions not from 9600 BCE, but from 10,900 BCE. That is 1300 years earlier. Either the alignments are coincidental, or someone was observing and recording celestial mechanics 2,000 years before agriculture. Look at what they carved. Aurochs, wild boar, gazelles, and repeatedly animals that went extinct at the end of the Younger Dryas period, cave lions, giant vultures, species that vanished between 12,000 and 11,000 years ago. They are carved with anatomical accuracy, muscle structure, movement patterns, behavioral details. These are not stylized symbols, they are observational records. But the official construction date is 9600 BCE. That is 1,000 years after these species disappeared. Either the builders were carving animals from cultural memory passed down through 40 generations without writing, or they were carving what they saw, which means the carvings predate the extinction, pushing the age of the site past the carbon dates by a millennium or more. The iconography shows no evolution. Later sites do not simplify these animal forms or abstract them. They abandon them entirely. Symbolism shifts to geometric patterns and human figures. It is not artistic development, it is replacement. The original meaning was lost, and later cultures filled the spaces with their own narratives, building over messages they could not read. Step back and see the pattern. The standard model of civilization says people domesticate plants, agriculture creates surplus, surplus enables specialization, specialists build monuments, monuments require writing for organizational complexity, and writing enables recorded history. It is a neat linear progression from hunting camps to cities. Göbekli Tepe inverts the sequence. Monuments first. Recent genetic analysis of grain samples near the site shows wild einkorn wheat transitioning to domesticated varieties between 9600 BCE and 9000 BCE after construction began. The archaeology suggests religion drove agriculture, not the other way around. People built the temples, then settled nearby to maintain them, then cultivated crops to feed the settlement. That changes everything. It means ideology precedes economics. It means organizational complexity existed before the food surpluses that supposedly enabled it. It means hunter-gatherers possessed knowledge, systems sophisticated enough to coordinate multi-generational construction projects without writing. And if that is true, the question is not just what they built. It is what they knew before they started building and where that knowledge came from. 95% of Göbekli Tepe remains unexcavated. Ground-penetrating radar maps at least 17 additional structures buried deeper than what has been revealed. Each layer down represents an earlier construction phase. The deepest signals suggest structures more massive than anything at the surface. Excavation stopped when excavators reached what they thought was bedrock. But radar shows voids beneath, possible earlier quarries or chambers. The parallels extend beyond Turkey. Precision stone cutting appears simultaneously across distant regions: Egypt, Peru, Bolivia, Cambodia. The same mortise joints, the same absence of tool marks, the same astronomical alignments, the same burial and abandonment patterns, the same collapse of knowledge afterward. Different cultures, different continents, different timelines by conventional dating, yet the construction signatures match. The myths suddenly demand attention. Sumerian texts describe antediluvian cities. Egyptian records mention before the flood dynasties. Hindu texts calculate civilization ages stretching back tens of thousands of years. Greek historians wrote of advanced cultures destroyed by cataclysm. Every ancient tradition says the same thing: we are not the first. Something came before, achieved mastery, then vanished. The stones do not prove the myths, but they stop dismissing them. Return to that unfinished pillar in the quarry, 50 tons, 7 meters long, still attached to bedrock. They carved trenches around it, undercut the sides, and shaped the T-cross section. Then they stopped. No tool marks indicate why. No damage suggests failure. Just abandonment in the middle of the task, as if everyone walked away simultaneously and never returned. 11,500 years later, much remains unknown. We do not know what tools they used. None have been recovered. We do not know how they moved 16-ton loads uphill without wheels or animals. No infrastructure has been found. We do not know how they achieved 2mm precision without metal. No technique explains it. We do not know why they buried the entire site deliberately. No motive was recorded. We do not know why the knowledge vanished. No succession is visible. But the stone remembers what the timeline forgot. The measurements do not negotiate. The physics does not compromise. The erosion does not lie. And somewhere beneath 95% of unexcavated ground, older structures wait. There are deeper layers that might push the dates back further or reveal construction phases that make the current questions obsolete. The stones are patient. They have waited this long. They will wait while we catch up.